Hi, this is Brian Kim. I want to share with you case number 102 in the Best Way to Do Cataract Surgery series. This is a interesting looking endonucleus. It's got a beautiful and clearly delineated endonucleus, almost like a snow globe within the lens. And it has a moderate density. You'll see double chop, cross chop mechanical fracturing techniques and how I'm able to efficiently and methodically disassemble this lens. So here is that lens. It's got this beautifully well delineated and demarcated endonucleus within the epinucleus. I'm using a cotton tip to steady the eye and using a corneal marker, which will hopefully help me to center incise a rhexis. I make my paracentesis incision first on the right side and then the left side, making sure I'm flat to the iris plane, which creates a nice corneal shelf, which will allow me to achieve a self-sealing incision. This is intracameral lidocaine, and then dispersive viscoelastic, which will coat the corneal endothelium and fill the chamber. Using the cannula to control the eye, I do the triplanar corneal incision. I make a vertical groove, place the blade into the deep part of the groove, tunnel through the cornea, turn the eye towards me with the cannula, and then I enter. Push some more viscoelastic. And this is my rhexis forceps. I go in with the teeth sideways. Then I want to puncture the center, pull downward towards me, grabbing the right side of the tear, going around circumferentially, following the corneal mark that I made, which will hopefully allow me to get a well-centered incised rhexis. Finish off the rhexis, burp some viscoelastic out, and this is the Capsulorhexis hydrodissection technique. I place the cannula under the rhexis edge contra-incisionally, point the tip down, get a nice wave, turn the tip back up, decompress on the left side, point the tip down on the right, and then I'm able to spin the lens. Irrigating the surface of the eye, adjusting my sleeve, lifting the incision with a chopper, going in with irrigation off to minimize Descemet's trauma, removing the surface epinuclear material, placing the chopper under the rhexis edge contra-incisionally, the phaco tip vertically sub-incisionally, crushing and fracturing the lens completely in half. That is double chop, placing the chopper around the right heminucleus, pulling it centrally towards the phaco tip, crushing it against the phaco tip. That is the cross chop. Lifting the first quadrant with some vacuum, and then crushing it between the instruments into smaller pieces, and then emulsifying the lens pieces. Placing the chopper around the second quadrant, pulling it centrally towards the phaco tip and crushing it against the phaco tip, and then using the instruments to crush the pieces into smaller pieces and then emulsifying the lens pieces. Turning the second heminucleus in front of me, placing the chopper around the lens piece, pulling it centrally and crushing it against the phaco tip. That third quadrant just came up, so I've started to break it up into smaller pieces and then emulsifying the lens piece. Placing the chopper around the last quadrant, cutting it in half between the instruments, and then emulsifying the lens piece. Grabbing the anterior aspect of the epinucleus, making sure the chopper is deep to protect the posterior capsule. So I take the chopper out, push BSS in, take the phaco tip out, and I go in with the eye knee handpiece. Start sub-incisionally, removing the cortex from anterior to posterior, peeling it so that it comes off cleanly. Switching to polish mode, polishing under the rhexis edge and looking for any remaining cortical material as well. There's always some fine little pieces of lens material adherent to the posterior capsule as well. So I like to go after it with the polymer tip. It's very safe doing this. Pushing some BSS into the subincisional capsulorhexis, and then injecting cohesive viscoelastic to fill the bag, and then sweeping under the rhexis edge on the left side, and then on the right side. This is the single piece acrylic lens. And inject it into the capsular bag. You can see it requires quite a bit of force because that incision is so small. You saw that viscoelastic coming out. When that happens, you have to be very mindful that the bag is still completely inflated when you're delivering the lens. And the way I deal with that is I apply a little posterior pressure, which actually causes the bag to expand even more when I'm delivering the lens itself. So I go underneath the optic, tilting it, rotating it 90 degrees, removing all the viscoelastic from within the bag, polishing under the rhexis edge as well, rotating the haptics in a more horizontal orientation, making sure the posterior capsule is clean of any lens material here. Sometimes there's some stubborn material that's still stuck to the posterior capsule, so I'll go after that with this polymer tip. It's very safe to do this. Switching to viscoelastic mode and removing the viscoelastic from the anterior chamber, and then I'll hydrate my incision. So again, this is a patient who has a very unusual looking endonucleus. It almost looked like a crystal ball within the lens. It had somewhat of a dense lens, I would say a moderate lens density. We performed double chop, cross chop mechanical fracturing techniques. Again, I'm utilizing mechanical leverage to crush the lens into smaller pieces, and I'm able to bisect the entire lens with double chop, and then I'm able to bisect the heminuclei doing the cross chop maneuver. I'm able to do this without really necessarily needing to spin the lens. I'm able to perform all the fracturing within the capsular bag without having to spin the lens. And then once the lens pieces are smaller, being able to hook the lens pieces up with the chopper, or grabbing it with a little bit of vacuum and then positioning the lens piece so I can crush the lens into smaller pieces with my instruments, and then emulsifying the lens pieces. So this is why I love doing cataract surgery this way. It's just a very efficient, methodical way to systematically break down the lens. So I hope this was helpful to you, and I thank you for your attention.